the relationship science research that a lot of people don't have access to because of paywalls, or because research is written for other academics and it's not particularly digestible by non-academics. And so my goal was just to bring what the research says to people who need it, who are struggling, and to make it accessible so they can actually take all the research that's done and apply those findings to whatever kind of situation they are in. So I didn't want anybody else to spend years too long in a unhealthy relationship.
Yeah. No, that you're perfect for this. The
Thank you.
the it's really interesting, we see a lot about, power, conflict, money, attachment, and how they influence people and end up making some kind of poor decisions. And so let's start with money. And I'm saying that because it's the first thing that most people ask about
Mm.
when they come in to talk to an attorney. And the most feared outcome. It's just, they're very afraid that it's going to break them, it's going to, ruin them financially, and it really does make them susceptible, to not making the right choices. So let's kind of start with that, how money is influences that decision making.
Sure, sure. One of the first things that comes to mind for me is how money, both in a marriage and particularly, I would say, in a divorce, is often used as a tool for control or trying to maintain some level of security. And so, I think in particular in relationships where maybe there have been a lot of power imbalances during the marriage, maybe, a lot of times abusive relationships are really not about violence. That's what we think, but it's really about power and control. And so if somebody was in a very controlling relationship, that is not going to stop once they decide that the relationship is over and they're talking to an attorney. So, a lot of times one party will try and use money to control the other one to get more of what they want out of the divorce, whether that's, financially or um, related to the children. So it's can be, I see it a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of times it can be used as a weapon.
Yeah. And it's, people who hide money really mess up the whole system.
Mm,
And it's so hard to make a decision if you're not getting the information you need. And it seems like it's a lot of people do it just to punish the other attorney, the other person.
absolutely. Yeah. That's where I think it gets weaponized a lot of times. And I think broadly people are tempted and may often use the divorce process as a way to punish. Like they feel like they have been morally wronged in the relationship. And so they're going to use the divorce to get their pound of flesh. And,
Yeah.
better than anyone that that's not what divorce law is there for.
No, not at all. The the other one you talked about, which I really, really think is interesting, is how conflict makes everything harder.
Mm,
You kind of
it
kind of go
does.
through that because that really is a major driver of going badly.
hmm Absolutely. Yes. I think it often can lead to, destroying assets, undermining assets that the couple has and to like prolonging the process. I have somebody who close to me whose divorce process took 3 years. I'm not a divorce attorney, so maybe that's not that long, but I think it really took a toll on their minor children, just the continued uncertainty. Um, Actually, I learned recently after my mom passed away that my own parents' divorce when I was 9 took about 2 or 2.5 years. And I can look back and go, oh man, like I vividly remember how unstable my mother was during that point in time. And so the conflict's not helpful. And it delays things. It is harmful to people's well-being. And I think, really sets the stage or a foundation for especially for any co-parenting that's going on later, to
Yeah.
not go well. And the kids are the ones that suffer the most because of that.
Yeah, it's like when conflict starts, like you just said, it spills into everything. It's
Hmm.
like, you even if you don't really have a conflict with them, you make one.
Hmm. Hmm. Actually, I kind of see it as people use conflict as a lens. And so
Yeah.
everything with the divorce, they're seeing through that conflict lens instead of, I teach negotiation. So I'm constantly talking with students or people that I'm coaching in negotiation about interests. And those are our fundamental human needs. And I think a lot of times people forget that in a divorce. Like, what are our interests? Well, our interests are probably, setting things up so the kids are as healthy and happy as can be given the situation, especially over the long term. Our interests are hopefully in both parties having enough financially to live on, or situating one party, like if one was a stay-at-home parent, getting them more education so they can be in the workforce. There are a lot more productive ways than just um, yes, putting our
Yeah.
time, energy, attention into the conflict when it
Yeah.
should be
Yeah.
going somewhere else.
It's like not it's saying no to everything, whether or not
Right. Oh,
you don't
yes.
even want it to be no. I'm just
Yes.
going to say it
Yes.
just to, you know,
Yes.
because I'm bad.
Actually, exactly the couple that I'm aware of who spent 3 years trying to get their divorce done. One of the parties, every time they would go to mediation, one of the parties would just show up and say no to everything, and then they'd leave. And then, like 3 months later, they'd do it all again. And
Yeah.
yeah, so you have to there has to be some willingness to collaborate. I wouldn't say necessarily compromise, because I tend to think of compromise as a problematic approach a lot of times to conflict. But if you
Yeah.
can't be collaborative, it's going to take a really long time, and there are a lot of people who are going to get hurt in the process.
Yep. And you know, I'm sure you see this all the time, especially in, your mediation stuff, your negotiation stuff, is that it is the number one driver of attorney fees.
Oh, I bet so. Oh, sure. Oh, sure. I can't imagine many thousands or tens of thousands of dollars some couples that I know of where their process is drug out. Um, Actually, I had an opportunity. I don't know. I guess it was an opportunity. The option is what I'll say in my divorce, to go to court because my spouse at the time was demanding alimony. Both my attorney and the mediator said there's no case for alimony here. He has a very solid full-time job. And they said, but if you go to court, you're going to spend X tens of thousands of dollars on attorney's fees. So it might just make more sense to pay the alimony. That's what I did. And it helped protect things, information from becoming public that would have hurt people in the process. And it saved time and energy. And yeah,
Yeah.
actually, at the end of
And
my, me, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and that's kind of where attorneys come in when especially good, family law attorneys, where they can sort of be a buffer for that
Mm-hmm.
contact.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
even, someone can have, all this like anger, wanting to fight, but, you know, that can be filtered down to let's do this as a legal system works,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
just, try to burn each other's house down.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So I think that it's super important. I feel really lucky. The attorney that I chose had been recommended to me by a friend who'd gone through the process about 6 months before me. And this attorney was just fabulous. And I've referred at least three friends to him who are contemplating divorce. And so I
Yeah.
think that's an incredibly important decision, and that people should talk to probably several. And if you can get a personal referral for an attorney that, is really not just good legally, but has the emotional and the relational intelligence to kind of be a guide.
Yeah. And power. Power is really an interesting one. Um, and it when it's really imbalanced, it's really hard to go places and having it in the right
Hmm.
direction. And a kind of weird phenomenon is a lot of times, we see where both sides are saying the other side is, has the power, is the
Oh,
narcissist,
interesting.
is the one not doing it.
Yeah,
So it's really interesting. But boy, if it's imbalanced, that can't then be really hard to try to negotiate or settle anything.
absolutely. Yes. And I think when you've got power imbalances, um, a lot of times divorces become super destructive because if somebody actually does have more power, they have, access to the finances where
Yep.
maybe, or they controlled the finances, maybe where the other party was like kept out of it. They don't even know how much money they have, much less where it is. Um, but when there is that massive power imbalance, it becomes very destructive because, yeah, especially with finances, maybe one partner probably controlled the finances. They tended to dominate whatever decision making goes on with the couple. And so there's like this pattern. There's like
Yeah.
um, it's some, there's a saying about we gravitate to what's certain rather than the uncertainty and patterns of familiarity. And so, that doesn't stop when the couple decides like it's time for us to end this marriage. Those same patterns about who makes the decisions and, especially if you have a partner who is controlling or and with that like emotionally manipulative or uses intimidation.
Yeah.
um it leaves the other party just feeling, I think, not just overwhelmed, but um yeah, it's demoralizing. And
Yeah.
when you're in that state and especially emotions are high, you're not going to make great decisions.
Yeah. And you end up thinking, oh, I can't win, so I'll just give up.
Mm-hmm. I'll just give up.
And
Yep.
and again, that's where someone like you or an attorney come in because they're independent, they're not part of that battle, and they can still advocate
Mm.
even when you feel you can't.
Yes, yes. Actually, you bring up a really interesting point there that I think is important for people who maybe are contemplating ending a relationship and they, maybe towards the end, or maybe they've known for a long time, they're recognizing that their partner was very controlling, emotionally, physically, financially, sexually. The divorce process and the negotiation and or mediation of that process can help them take their power back. It's they can see it as if they can see it as an opportunity. And I'm speaking from experience because I was in a very controlling relationship. Even though I made the majority of our income, my then spouse controlled it all. And so it was an opportunity when we got divorced and in that mediation to really start taking back that power. And it felt really good. It was kind of scary on the front end because it wasn't something I'd really done before. But I think that can be, the one of the first steps towards someone recreating or growing a new life that they absolutely love. That divorce isn't the end of the world. The sky won't fall down. Does it suck? Is it scary and sad? Absolutely. But it also provides an opportunity for people to start down that path that says, okay, my life has been like this. And going forward, this is how I'm going to show up in the world.
Yeah. It's interesting on this last one and attachment. An attachment, we find it can be to anything. I mean, it can be to your
Mm,
house, your,
mm,
your you know, job, your kids, I mean, all these attachments that people are so cling to as they are. And it's
mm.
really tough to get around that sometimes, isn't it?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We want to dig in our heels. And I think part of the attachment comes from, we're attached to what has been, we're attached to what's certain, because looking ahead, the future may feel and actually be very uncertain. And so, and with different attachment styles also show up differently with respect to, divorce processes. Anxious attachment people tend to often, I think, prolong the divorce process because they're, just not ready to give up that connection. Even if they, know this is what's healthier, it's like letting go of that connection is really hard. And then
Yeah.
avoidance, show up in their whole, in a different way, trying to maybe create more distance or maybe not come to the table as collaboratively.
Yeah.
So
It's
yes,
got
all of it shapes it.
uh, it's just that emotional kind of, it's hard to, you know, control your emotions in this situation.
Mm,
You know.
absolutely. Yes. That's where I think it's so important. And I kind of alluded to it a minute ago, but I have a different phrase for it at this moment. Helping people focus on the future. And I think about it and suggest friends think about like, what does your future self want? And so we can get so stuck or overwhelmed by what's going on in the present and, maybe getting to a conclusion in the divorce very quickly or drawing it out or, that can look like a lot of different things, but really thinking about what do I want in my life and who do I want to be a year or 3 years or 5 years from now. So focusing on the future, I think can help people not feel the emotions because a lot of times we have to feel them in order to heal from them, but to not let our emotions hijack the process that should be helping us set up our life and our happiness for success,
Yeah.
several years down the road.
Okay. These are the things that you had talked about get in the way of making good
Mm,
decisions.
hmm
So I come into you and these are happening. I mean, it's how can I deal with them? I mean, how can I avoid making them, even if they're there, make bad decisions? And I know that you're you talk a lot about mediation, and mediation is a huge part and
hmm
the a great opportunity to resolve stuff, but sometimes people just can't get to the place to be able to even want to go, much less, try to do it effectively. So what
Yeah.
do you, I mean, how can you help people when they're just like stuck?
Mm. Well, I'm a huge fan of mediation for all kinds of reasons, but especially because, mediation, different from arbitration, mediation, the mediator controls the process, but the disputants or the parties getting divorced, they control the outcome. So I think that's super important. So you have somebody like the mediator who's supposed to be an objective third party to all of this, who can guide, who can maybe make suggestions or put options on the table. And the thing I think is so critical before you have any sort of mediation like that with attorneys involved who you're paying, for however long the mediation takes is figuring out what are your goals?
Yeah.
Like getting to mediation and not knowing what you want to get out of it, other than, what some people say is, I want everything, or I just don't want him to have anything or her to have anything. Like, again, that's leading with the emotion, and emotions are our reality, but they don't serve the purpose. And so figuring out what are your goals, and maybe that's what do we want for our children over the next, until they're not minors anymore. What do we want their lives to look like? And so that's where I think thinking about what does their future self want or need.
Yeah.
Part of that too is like figuring out their non-negotiables. What won't they agree to? Because a lot of times, again, mediation is still emotional. You still can drive, you can drive each other crazy and step on toes very easily. And I think some, especially controlling partners, will do that just to get a reaction from the other party. But figuring out, yeah, what your goals are, what are your non-negotiables, so that you don't have regret after the mediation is done if you come to an agreement. So knowing what you absolutely will not tolerate or will not agree to, I think those are super important. And a lot of people either go into a mediation, I think, thinking that they're not going to get anything out of it and they're just going to get taken to the cleaners, or vice versa. Like, I'm going to get everything. I'm going to make sure the other person has nothing. My perspective on negotiation is hopefully, if it's a win-win, each party walks away with whatever, as much of whatever is most important to them as possible. And, maybe that's um, financial resources for the children, or if children are involved, agreeing to stay within so many miles until the partners of each other until the kids get older. But understanding not just what you want, but I tell people to rank order those interests, because you're not going to get everything you want. But And if you are clear with like my highest priority is X and Z is, further down here, well, then you're going to fight like crazy to get as much of X as you can. And then, you can give more on whatever issue Z is. Maybe it's who gets the weekend at the home in the Hamptons or whatever. I don't know. But really understanding the order priority of their interests is super important for knowing where to fight hard for something that you want or need in the mediation and where to like say, okay, this isn't that important to me, but it sounds like it's important to the other side. Give them more of what they want. I personally, I wanted to be done with my process as quickly as humanly possible. I'd known too many people where it just drug on, and I did not want that. And so
Yeah.
I was also willing to like pay alimony to have the process done quickly. So money was more important to him, time was more important to me, and so we traded off those issues.
Yeah, and that's really good. I mean, knowing should I write that stuff down? I mean,
Oh, yes.
a lot of times it's you know what you want, you know what you want, then you get into it and you
Yes.
you you get flustered.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
so
I say for any negotiation or mediation, write it down, write everything down. I had for mine, and I would encourage others to do this, especially if there's lots of assets. There weren't a ton of assets in mine, but I wanted to be really clear with myself about what I would give and what I would not give. And I knew that emotion was going to be part of it. And so write it down, work your spreadsheets, bring those to the mediation. Nobody says you have to show up to mediation empty handed, like write
yeah,
it down. Also, there, with respect to that, it's not only helpful to you in the mediation to like remember what your priorities are, but it helps you be accountable to yourself. Because in
yeah,
psychology, there's a saying that says we live up to what we write down.
yeah,
So if you write it down, it's much, and you're looking at it towards the end of the mediation, you're like, no, I got to hold firm because I wrote it down. This is a promise to myself. I think that's profound. It's way more important and impactful than people probably think on the front end. Mhm.
yeah. I, and I also love when you talked about like prioritizing
Mhm.
because it feels like if you start with what you want the most and you get it satisfactorily, it relaxes you and it allows
Mm,
you to say, okay, I'm going to be a little more, uh, giving on some of these others because I do really have you're kind of like in a position where, if you start with the things you don't care so much about, and so they get this, that, then you get like, oh my God, this is the one thing I want, and I haven't gotten anything, and now you're really frustrated.
yes, yes. And likely to act with emotion or anger that kind of undermines what you want. So yes, focusing on what is that your highest priority first and fighting really hard for that. Super important.
Kind of goofy question. You teach this stuff, and
Mhm.
and you know, how do you kind of figure out this stuff to help people? I mean, it's you talk a lot about it just part of your reality.
Mhm.
But there's also science to it. There's factual backing with a lot of the stuff you said in there.
Sure, sure. Yes, specifically with goals, or even if we want to get really specific about it, setting like a kind of an overall goal. So it's a little complicated. I like my whiteboards, but if you say you have a situation with three issues and you rank order them, which one is the most important, then middle, and then least, um, figuring out what what would be your not your ideal, and you're not being necessarily optimistic, but you're being realistic about like how much you can get. We call that in negotiation an aspiration point or a target point. And so, what the research shows is um, our final outcome, whatever we get out of the negotiation, is correlated at point 0.7 to whatever aspiration we set. So, in other words, like if you walk into um, I love to ski in Utah, but I'm not a snowmobiler. But if you walk into a snowmobile shop and the ticket says, 10 grand, and you're like, well, yeah, I'm not going to pay that. You might, if you set your aspiration like 9,000, you may be able to get it for like 6,300
Yeah.
because, take whatever that is. So zero point 0.7 is a really high correlation. 1.0 is a one-to-one relationship. It has a profound impact because it gives us something to strive for. If we don't know what we're striving for,
Yeah.
we're not going to have great tactics. We're not going to bring great behaviors, and probably we're not going to bring creativity to the negotiation. My guess is maybe that's not something people think a lot about in a divorce situation. Is like, how can we be creative here? But I think anytime a negotiation or mediation is high stakes, the more creative or innovative people can be, within the bounds of the law, the better it is for everybody.
Oh, yeah, the you just hit it like totally on the head. The more conflicted, the more difficult, the more hard it is. That's where creativity is most important.
Oh, I agree. Yes.
Yeah, and you can see it. And so what am I saying correctly that if I come into you or go to one of your classes, I can learn these things from you and you like work through me and my issues.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the best parts of my day job, and something I love to do outside of that is help basically coach people in their preparation for a negotiation. And so working one on one to help them figure out, okay, what are my goals here? What are my interests?
Yeah.
And then figuring out, helping people really get clarity about, because a lot of people will say, well, everything's important. Like, that may be true, but not every issue has the same
Yeah.
level of importance. And so helping people get clarity on that, um, and recognizing too, especially I would say in broader situations, though, a divorced couple may negotiate later several times, who knows? But with people that we negotiate with repeatedly, knowing that we may have to do that. And so protecting the relationship as much as we can is really important. I mean, especially if this is somebody you're going to co parent with. And so um, recognizing that nobody walks out of a divorce with an outcome probably that they're super excited about. But I would also say we shouldn't necessarily walk out of most negotiations being super satisfied with what we got. Because if we are, then either we didn't ask for enough, we weren't ambitious enough, or we were an absolute bully and the other side didn't get much of anything. And neither of those, like, you can have a win-win without one or both parties getting everything they want. If both parties got everything they want, then, I think most of the time something was a little askew somewhere.
Oh yeah. And I love how you say you you're gonna have to live with this person in most
Mm-hmm.
cases.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's you make decisions that affect the future, and that's part of
Mm-hmm.
goes into the mix of making those decisions. Wow, that was
Yes.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow.
One thing I'll add to
Um,
that about being creative is especially being creative and thinking about what kind of life you want and who you want to be down the road. So one of the things that I did, and it was not my idea, it was actually my therapist at the time. So after mediation, I had a session with her, and I was like, "Well, this sucks. I'm paying alimony to, you know, what's his name and blah blah blah," and I was not happy about it. But I knew, like logically, in my negotiation brain, knew that was less costly and more helpful than going to court. And so what she suggested was make um, make a separate bank account that the alimony gets paid out of. And so for X months until I had enough alimony saved up, I put all that into a separate account. And from then on, I sent out those alimony checks on auto pay from that account. I never had to see it.
oh my gosh, I
It
love
was
that.
it I called it my peace and freedom account,
Yeah,
my peace and freedom fund. It
I
was
love
it
it.
was so helpful to my brain space and to not think about it. But to look over there, once I had it all saved up and go, yeah, I saved that and I'm going to deal with him and I'm going to go off and live my best life. And
Yeah.
so getting creative, in a lot of different ways, super helpful.
Oh, but that's great. Wow, we just blew through 30 minutes. And unfortunately, we are out of time, but or almost. Before we go, if someone wants to get a hold of you, wants to talk to you more about this, get some more information, how can they reach you?
Sure. I would say the two best ways are on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat with people that way or connect in some form or fashion. Um, Especially for listeners who might be contemplating divorce. I'm the founder of Partner Lab, where we use relationship science to help people make better decisions. We offer basically relationship decision support, especially with regard to whether they want to stay in the relationship or end it. And so you can find us at mypartnerlab.co. And yeah, I love to connect with people and share what the research says and make it relatable and help people live their best lives.
Yeah, yeah. It's all, you're just giving them a reality check. I
Hmm.
mean, you really are.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Steve. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so
Oh,
much.
me too. Me too. And everyone else, thank you for joining us today. If anyone has any further questions on today's topic, you can post it here. We get you in touch with Meredith, or you can contact her directly. And until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and be